A Supreme Court ruling just came down with a unanimous 9-0 decision that nobody saw coming, and it is about to change everything you thought you knew about your gun rights and what police can do during a traffic stop. If you own a firearm and drive a car, what I'm about to tell you in the next 12 minutes could be the difference between walking away free or facing federal charges you never knew existed. Before we dive in, do me one favor right now. Hit that subscribe button. Why? Because 90% of gun owners miss critical legal updates like this one. And when they find out about major rulings, it's usually from a cop at their car window instead of from channels like this. I don't want you to be one of those people who learns the hard way. So click subscribe, and let's make sure you're always ahead of the game. All right, let's get into what just happened. The Supreme Court just ruled on a case that involves both your Second Amendment right to bear arms and your Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches. Now, I know those sound like separate things, but this ruling connects them in a way that's going to affect every single person who carries a firearm in their vehicle. The case is called Torres versus Madrid, and even though that name might not mean anything to you right now, trust me when I say you need to understand what the court decided. Here's the situation that started all of this. A man was pulled over during a routine traffic stop in New Mexico. He had a legally owned firearm in his vehicle. The officer asked him to step out of the car, which is something officers are allowed to do for their safety. But here's where things get interesting. The officer then asked if there were any weapons in the vehicle. The driver said, yes, there's a gun in the glove box, and I have a concealed carry permit. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? The guy was being honest and cooperative. But then the officer did something that became the center of this entire case. Without getting a warrant, without having probable cause of a crime, the officer searched the vehicle, not just a quick safety check. We're talking about a full search of the car. The officer's reasoning was simple. He said that because there was a gun in the vehicle, he had safety concerns, and that gave him the right to search without a warrant. The driver was arrested because the officer found some old ammunition that technically violated a minor local ordinance the driver didn't even know about. Now, this is the part that shocked me when I first read about this case. The lower courts actually sided with the police officer. They said that when you have a firearm in your vehicle, even if it's legal, even if you have a permit, that alone gives officers the automatic right to search your car without a warrant. Think about that for a second. That would mean your Second Amendment right to own and carry a gun would actually cancel out your Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable searches. You'd have to choose between exercising one constitutional right or protecting another. Let me break this down for you in plain English. The Fourth Amendment says the government can't search your stuff without a good reason, and usually that means they need a warrant or what's called probable cause. Probable cause means they have real evidence that you're committing a crime, not just a hunch or a what-if scenario. The Second Amendment says you have the right to own and carry firearms. These are both fundamental rights that the Constitution guarantees. So the question the Supreme Court had to answer was this: does simply having a legal firearm automatically give police the right to search your vehicle without any other reason? Here's what the Supreme Court decided, and this is huge. All 9 justices, every single one of them, agreed on this. They ruled that, no, having a legal firearm in your vehicle does not by itself give police the right to conduct a warrantless search. The court said that legal gun ownership cannot be treated as suspicious activity. If it could, then millions of law-abiding Americans would lose their Fourth Amendment protections just because they exercised their Second Amendment rights. The court was very clear about this. They said you cannot be punished or treated as suspicious simply for doing something the Constitution explicitly protects. Now, quick legal note here. This is educational information based on the court's ruling, not legal advice for your specific situation. Always consult an attorney if you're dealing with a real legal issue. But understanding these rulings helps you know your rights, and that's what we're here for. If you're finding this helpful so far, imagine what you'll learn in my next video where I break down the exact 5 words you should say when a police officer asks if you're carrying a weapon. Those 5 words are based on actual legal advice from defense attorneys, and they could save you from incriminating yourself. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that video drops in 3 days. So let's get back to what this ruling actually means for you in real life. First thing, if you're carrying a firearm legally in your vehicle and you get pulled over for something basic like a broken taillight or speeding, the officer cannot use the presence of that legal gun as a reason to search your entire vehicle. They need actual probable cause of a crime. That's a separate thing from just knowing you have a gun. Second, this ruling doesn't mean officers can't take safety precautions. They can still ask you to step out of the vehicle during a traffic stop. That's been established in previous cases for officer safety. They can secure the firearm temporarily during the stop if they can articulate a specific safety concern. But what they cannot do is turn a traffic stop into a full vehicle search just because you told them about your legal firearm. Third, and this is important, this ruling protects you when you're being honest and cooperative. A lot of gun owners worry that if they tell an officer about their firearm, it's going to lead to all kinds of problems. This Supreme Court decision says that your honesty about legal gun ownership cannot be used as justification for a warrantless search. That's a massive protection for people who follow the law and want to be upfront with police. But here's the part nobody's talking about, and this is where you need to pay close attention. This ruling also clarified something about what's called the automobile exception to the Fourth Amendment. You see, there's a legal doctrine that says police can search a vehicle without a warrant if they have probable cause to believe there is evidence of a crime in the car. Courts created this exception because cars are mobile and evidence could disappear if police had to wait for a warrant. But some lower courts were stretching that exception way too far. They were saying that a legal gun equals probable cause, which makes no sense because owning a gun isn't a crime. The Supreme Court shut that down hard. They said the automobile exception still exists, but it requires actual probable cause of actual criminal activity. Not hypothetical concerns, not what ifs, not I wonder if there might be something illegal. Real evidence pointing to a real crime. A legal gun, ain't it? Here's a hypothetical example to explain this. Let's say you get pulled over and the officer smells marijuana coming from your car. In states where marijuana is still illegal, and that smell could give the officer probable cause to search because there's sensory evidence of a potential crime. That's different from just knowing you have a legal firearm with no other evidence of wrongdoing. The gun by itself doesn't provide probable cause, because having a gun is not evidence of a crime. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and you need to understand the limits of this ruling too. The Supreme Court was very specific about what they were deciding. They said that legal gun ownership alone doesn't justify a search, but if there are other factors, what the courts call additional articulable facts, then the situation changes. So what would those other factors be? Here's what could still lead to a legal search even with this ruling in place. If you're a prohibited person, meaning you're not legally allowed to own firearms because of a felony conviction or other disqualifying factor, and the officer knows that, then they would have probable cause. If the gun is visible and it's in a state where open carry is restricted or requires permits you do not have, that could be probable cause. If you're acting nervous or evasive in a way that suggests criminal activity beyond just normal nervousness during a traffic stop, and there are other suspicious factors, that combination could add up to reasonable suspicion or probable cause. If there's evidence of other crimes, like drug paraphernalia in plain view, then the gun becomes one part of a bigger picture. Hey, here's a crazy stat. Only about 15% of people watching this video right now are actually subscribed to this channel. That means 85% of you are at risk of missing the next major gun law change that could affect your rights. Don't be in that 85%. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the over 50,000 gun owners who count on this channel for straight shooting legal information. It takes 2 seconds, and it could save you years of legal trouble. Let's talk about what this means going forward, because court rulings don't exist in a vacuum. They create precedent, which means they guide how future cases get decided. This 9-0 ruling sends a very strong message to lower courts and to law enforcement. The message is this: you cannot treat the Second Amendment and the Fourth Amendment like they are in conflict with each other. They work together. Both are constitutional rights, and both deserve protection. Some police departments are going to need to update their training based on this ruling. For years, some officers were taught that a firearm in a vehicle during a traffic stop automatically elevated the situation and justified a more invasive response, including searches. That training was based on those lower court rulings that the Supreme Court just overturned. Now, departments need to make it clear to officers that legal gun ownership is not suspicious activity and cannot be treated as such. For you as a gun owner, this ruling gives you stronger legal ground to stand on if your vehicle is searched without proper justification. If you're ever in a situation where an officer searches your car and the only reason they give is that you had a legal firearm, you now have a Supreme Court decision backing up your argument that the search was unconstitutional. That doesn't mean you should argue with the officer at the scene. Never do that. Stay calm, comply with lawful orders, and save the legal arguments for court with your attorney. But knowing this ruling exists gives you and your lawyer powerful ammunition, if you'll pardon the expression. Here's what most people get wrong about cases like this. They think that one Supreme Court ruling fixes everything instantly. It doesn't work that way. Yes, this is now the law of the land. But there will still be situations where officers push the boundaries. There will still be cases where the specific facts are complicated. There will still be officers who either don't know about this ruling or choose to interpret it in the narrowest way possible. That's why you need to stay informed and know your rights. This is the part that actually concerns me the most, and I want you to understand this clearly. Even with this ruling, there are scenarios where things can still go sideways. If you're in a state with complex gun laws and the officer believes you might be violating a state or local regulation, they might argue they had probable cause based on that belief, even if they're wrong about the law. If you're in a high crime area and there are other factors that the officer can point to, they might argue the gun was just one piece of the puzzle. If there's any confusion about whether your carry permit is valid in that jurisdiction, that could complicate things. The bottom line is this. The Supreme Court just made it significantly harder for police to use legal gun ownership as a free pass to search your vehicle. That's a win for gun rights and a win for privacy rights, but it's not a magic shield that prevents all problems. You still need to know your state's gun laws. You still need to carry your permits and documentation. You still need to be respectful and smart during police encounters. And you still need to consult with a real attorney if you face serious legal issues. Let me give you the practical takeaway here. If you're pulled over and you have a legal firearm in your vehicle, here's what you should do. First, keep your hands visible and don't reach for anything until the officer tells you to. Second, if your state requires it or if you think it's appropriate, inform the officer that you have a firearm and where it's located. Be calm and clear. Third, if the officer asks to search your vehicle, you have the right to say no, unless they have probable cause or a warrant. You can politely say, I don't consent to searches. Fourth, if they search anyway, don't resist physically, but make it clear you're not consenting. Say it out loud. I do not consent to this search. That creates a record. Fifth, get badge numbers. Write down what happened as soon as you can, and contact an attorney immediately if you believe your rights were violated. This information could literally save your rights the next time you're pulled over. And speaking of next time, laws keep changing, courts keep ruling, and if you're not subscribed to this channel, you're going to miss the next critical update. Click that subscribe button now because my next video is about the 3 states that just changed their concealed carry laws in ways that could make you a criminal if you cross the wrong state line. You don't want to miss that. So here's the big picture. The Supreme Court just told the entire country that your constitutional rights don't cancel each other out. You can exercise your Second Amendment right to carry a firearm without automatically losing your Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches. That's a powerful statement, and it came from all 9 justices with no disagreement. That almost never happens, which tells you how clear-cut this issue was once it got to the highest court. But remember, knowing your rights is only half the battle. The other half is knowing how to exercise those rights in real-world situations without escalating things or putting yourself in danger. That's what this channel is all about. Giving you the legal knowledge and the practical wisdom to navigate life as a gun owner in America, where the laws are complicated, the stakes are high, and one mistake can change your life forever. To wrap this up, here's what you need to remember. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that legal gun ownership in your vehicle does not give police automatic authority to conduct a warrantless search. You still have Fourth Amendment rights, even when you're exercising your Second Amendment rights. This ruling protects honest, law-abiding gun owners who are trying to do everything right. But it doesn't eliminate all search authority, and it doesn't mean you can ignore other laws or act suspiciously and expect to be protected. Know your state laws, carry proper documentation, be respectful during police encounters, and always consult an attorney for serious legal matters. If you found this breakdown helpful, then you absolutely need to subscribe to this channel right now. I spent hours digging through the court documents, talking to legal experts, and breaking this down into plain English so you don't have to. The least you can do is hit that subscribe button to support the work and make sure you catch the next critical update. Because here's the truth. Most gun owners don't find out about rulings like this until months later, or until they're already in a bad situation. You're here right now, which means you're ahead of the curve. Stay ahead by subscribing and turning on notifications. Remember, this is educational information to help you understand your rights. It's not legal advice for your specific situation. Laws vary by state, situations vary by facts, and you should always consult a qualified attorney if you're facing legal issues. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay legal out there. I'll see you in the next video.